Hello, beautiful and amazing souls. Welcome to another next level free training, mastering neurodivergence using ADHD and anxiety as a tool, all while releasing and healing, removing from past trauma. Welcome, beautiful souls. My name is Raya. I'm your guide and host here at Shamanic Breakthrough, and I am honored to sit with you today. I look forward to this all week long, of the beautiful, juicy stuff that I get to share with you, and how we can uncover our superpowers that are mixed in with our neurodivergence, that are mixed in with our traumas and dramas and past experiences, and how we can truly create freedom for ourselves, and not just for ourselves, but for our life, for our business, for our families, for the future generations. I'm super excited to be here. Welcome. Today we are talking about limiting beliefs and how we as neuro badasses can shift them and use them as a superpower. Now, I had a lot of fun writing this week's post when I was talking about the ugly duckling and the swan, and how our environment molds us. Our environment shifts us. The way we are raised shifts us. It molds us. Now, how many of you remember the story of the ugly duckling? It was raised by ducks. That mama duck was so happy to have this beautiful little black duck swimming with it. And then all of a sudden the duck grew up and it got big. And everybody was laughing at it, because it didn't have black feathers like everybody else. It didn't fit in the crowd like everybody else. It was big and it was ugly. It turned into a white swan. But how does this limit us? How does this limit us when we're being raised by ducks instead of swans? Now, us as neurodivergents, as survivors of past trauma and ADHD, anxiety, we were raised in the environment of a duck. We are different. Our soul is different. Our frequency is different. Our mind is different. We think differently. We operate differently. And a lot of times when we are growing up, we limited ourselves trying to fit in. We wanted the approval of our parents. We wanted the approval of our friends. We wanted the approval of people at school. This literally shaped us. So when we as high dimensional souls, as very old souls with very wise energy, when we as rainbow children, indigo children, ancient souls come into this world of ducks, we limit ourselves to fit into society's molds. We do it unconsciously. It is our natural human experience to fit in with our society, to fit in with the crowd. We are safe that way, right? And to grow to have the approval of our parents and our peers. We literally carved off the best parts of ourselves to fit into society's box, society's patterns. We literally carved off those awesome parts of ourselves to fit into somebody else's expectations. We limited ourselves, and we were imprinted in this. So us being raised by ducks, us beautiful swans being raised by ducks, we tried to become ducks. We're not ducks. So when we as swans tried to fit in with ducks, we carved off our ADHD, we carved off our dyslexia, we carved off our high frequency thinking, our autism, or our free thinking abilities. We carved them off to fit into society's box, to fit into the approval of our parents and our friends at school and our peers. We did this unknowingly and unconsciously. So when we look at limiting beliefs, we have to get to the root of the limiting beliefs. The limiting beliefs aren't just fear of success, or fear of being a millionaire, or fear of a healthy relationship or a toxic relationship. Oh no, honey, it goes so much deeper. We are imprinting from the minute we are born. How does a human become a human? How does a Spanish speak Spanish? How do we speak English? We're imprinted. It's imprinted in our energy. It's imprinted in our soul. It's imprinted in our human design. So when we as swans were raised by ducks. We literally cut ourselves off from the most important parts of ourselves. We think backwards for a reason. We think outside for the box for a reason. We are psychic for a reason. We are magical, different weirdos for a reason. We have ADHD for a reason. There's a reason we can hyperfocus. We can fixate on things. There's a reason we're unorganized with certain things and organized with other things. There's a reason we don't want to show up to appointments. There's a reason we don't want to go to the doctor's office or to meetings at the school, even though we know how important it is. We are meant for a fucking purpose. We are here for a reason. We are different for a reason. And it is freaking beautiful. It brings up my cousin, my nephew. He is very autistic, and he is the most beautiful soul I've ever met in my life. He is the sweetest person I've ever met in my life. He came here like that for a reason. To help open the hearts of people around him. And he is just living his best life. He's not worried about limitations or lack or meanies at school sometimes, but he is the most beautiful soul I've ever met. And he's super innocent. We came here with our differences for a reason. We came here for a reason. I almost said special, but we're all special, right? So how do we unhinge ourselves from these limitations of being raised by ducks as swans? It also reminds me of the elephant story. When you tie a baby elephant, this big fucking elephant, to a wooden post with a chain as a baby, and it tries to get away and it can't. For years and years and years, this baby elephant is trying to break away from this post. It's a small post. As it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, soon it's a 2-ton animal, and it's still being held by this tiny post. We are products of our environment. We are products of our environment, and we continue to surround ourselves with that same environment. We are imprinted. So when we are raised in toxic situations, if we are raised by overcompulsive parents, emotionally unavailable parents, alcoholics, drug addicts, when we are raised by even professionals who are so into their work that they are not emotionally available for their children, then that is what we are going to recreate in our lives over and over and over again until we remember that we are swans and we remember that we were raised by ducks and change our fucking environment. And change our belief systems. Change our limiting beliefs. But in order to do that, we must realize that we are swans. That we are different and gifted for a reason. Society calls it a diagnosis because it's different than what they're used to. And yes, it is coming out that there is more autism and ADHD than ever before. Well, for one, they didn't know what it was before. And for two, there's so many high frequency souls coming onto this earth right now to give love, to change the frequency, to open people's hearts, to open people's minds, to be the rebel heart, to create a new way, create new systems, to create a new world, to bring love when there was none. We are the antidote. We are the antidote to the poisons that are happening around us, to genocide, to poverty. We are the antidote. But how? We have to get out of the duck thinking. We have to look in the mirror and see the swan within us. I had a conversation with Lisa when we were at the healing circle, and she was like, you can look in the mirror and you never truly see your reflection. We see a reflection in the people around us, which can be toxic as fuck, or it can be very, very, very supportive. Who do you surround yourself with and why? If you want to see your limiting beliefs, you want to see the product of your environment, you want to see the integration and the imprinting that has happened to you since you were a child, look at all the people around you. What type of life do they live? Because there is a reflection, there's a part of you that is completely mirrored to that space. Talk about radical accountability and radical acceptance. But in order for us to change, in order for us to create this new life, to step into our purpose, step into our power, step into our mastery, ascend, then we must see that we have been raised by ducks. We must see that the people around us are our direct influence. They are our biggest mirror. So they are us. Hello, Lisa. I was just talking about you when we were talking about the mirror effect. And everybody around you is your mirror. But when you look in the mirror, you never truly see yourself. We are the swans. How can we look in the mirror and see the swans? Well, when we're children and we're raised in this environment as a duck, and we carved all of those pieces off of ourselves to fit into society's box, to fit into our parents' approval, to fit into our school's approval, when we've carved ourselves off to fit in that box, now that we are older and we want to create a new life, we want to heal from anxiety or past trauma, we want to master our ADHD, we want to fucking live a peaceful life full of abundance, but we are in our own way, right? We have to look in the mirror and see all those pieces that we carved off. We tried to look like ducks. We're not ducks, we're swans. So how can we look in the mirror and see all the places where we've held on to ducks? Past, addictions, fears, limitations, relationships, all of the above. And see how we can look at ourselves as the swan. What pieces do we have to put back on? Like I said in the beginning, we were born different. We came here different for a reason. We are the free thinkers. We're here to change the system. But first we have to open up to our power. First we have to realize our power. We have to see that we are swans and we are here for a different with a divine purpose. And it doesn't matter if it's loving your neighbor in a beautiful way or if it's changing the world with a beautiful business. It doesn't matter what the purpose is. It's about living it, being it, shining that light, being your weird authentic self. Being ADHD and dyslexic and autistic and whatever they are, over emotional, it doesn't even matter, all of it. Being your neurodivergent self, but becoming the swan to stand out from society, which, by the way, is very uncomfortable because when we stood out as a child, we were bullied or beaten or hurt or molested or you know, these things are really part of our society. They're really part of how we were raised. So standing out is scary as hell because it injured us in the past. So not only were we imprinted by being raised by ducks when we're swans, we were also a product of our environment, no matter what our environment was, whether it was poverty, parties, rich, whatever it was. Also, we were also injured when we did try and stand out. So these limitations have we've been wearing like a cloak to protect us for a very, very long time. So how do we uncover ourselves from these limitations? It's very, very exciting. Because when we get to the point of free thinking, when we get to that point where, okay, I'm different for a reason, then we can see where we were limited by our society, limited by our environment, limited by our parents. Not knowingly, of course, our parents did the best that they could with what they had. It's not about that. It's about being a product of our environment and how we still create that same environment. Even though we want healing or peace or better relationships, even though we're still attracting toxic people or toxic relationships or low-paying jobs, right? We're still attracting these things. Even if it's high-paying jobs and arrogant men. Like, we are attracting these things because we are a product of our environment, because we are high-frequency souls, and that is what attracts to us because that's what we are sending out. So this limiting beliefs goes way deeper than just how we are limiting ourselves. It's so mind-opening. It's so beautiful. When you get to the roots of these things, we understand like, oh, that's why I am the way I am. And not only that, our nervous system is programmed for those old experiences. It's fucked up. But it's so beautiful because then when you learn all the tools that I know and when you learn all the things that I've learned, then you can really master your reality, you can master your energy, you can change the environment in which you live. But it takes time. It takes work. It takes devotion. But it can be done. And if you work with me, we can do it in months rather than years and years and years. But back to it. Duck, duck, goose. Duck, duck, swan. How do we stop quacking like a duck and start honking like a swan? Swans are super, super beautiful. You know, when I was writing this, it was super exciting because I absolutely had fun. My inner child had a blast talking about it. And it is so relevant to the imprinting theory that we have all experienced. There's a reason that ducks know how to fly, because their parents taught them to fly. I have wild ducks that don't fly. Their parents didn't teach them how to fly. That's exactly what we're talking about with these limiting beliefs and the wild child we have within ourselves. And the ADHD and the neurodivergence and anxiety and all these other things, backwards thinking. We weren't taught to use them as gifts. We weren't taught our magical abilities. We weren't taught free thinking. We weren't taught how to step into our hyper focus and learn different ways with our neurointelligence. So now, after years and years and years and eons, I don't know about eons, but lifetimes, right? Now we have to reteach ourselves or give ourselves the permission to think differently, to act differently, to hyperfixate on something, to be unorganized in one space and organized in another. There's a reason we don't want to go to the doctor's office with our children. There's a reason we have anxiety when we want to go shopping, because we don't want to do that. We want to be an alchemist in our space like Leonardo da Vinci, figuring out his purpose. Albert Einstein in the light bulb. Do you think he wanted to go to doctor's appointments? Fuck no. He spent hours and hours and hours and days and days and days figuring out 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb. He was hyper fixated on that shit. He was a genius. We are geniuses. We just have to get out of society's patterns. We have to get out of the skin scoot of a duck and find out why we are geniuses. Why are we different? Why do we have this ADHD? What do we want to hyper fixate on? I have huge goosebumps. Like, yes, queen. This is how we're going to step into our purpose. This is how we're going to step into our indifferences. This is how we're going to step into our power and change the fucking world. There's a reason he was fixated on trying to figure out how to build a light bulb. Nobody had ever done it before. Nobody ever heard about it. They thought he was crazy. And he's like, okay, but I know I have this idea. I know this will work. 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb, but he only needed one to make it work. Wonder how long he was hyper fixated on that. We are geniuses. We just haven't been built to be geniuses. We've been built to quack like a duck. So let's turn our limiting beliefs into superpowers by giving ourselves fucking permission to become a swan. I love it. Over 1,000 elements he tried, Lisa says. Fuck yeah. That is hyper focus. Let me tell you. Talk about ADHD as a superpower. Man, I want to write that in my book. Yes. Right? We use tungsten. But still, he gave people the idea and it changed the fucking world. Because he was hyper fixated on that. Can you see his office? How unorganized his office was, but how organized this space was where he was trying to build a fucking light bulb? Have you seen an artist's studio? All of it can be super unorganized, but this space right here is organized for their brain, just enough for them to master something, for them to create masterpieces. Who cares if we're unorganized? Who cares if we can't focus on certain things? Who cares if we don't like going to the doctor's office or doing certain things with our family? We are here for a divine purpose. We are old souls, and we are imprinted as ducks, and we need to step into our swan energy and learn how to connect to our purpose. Learn how to connect to that superpowers. Is it to love people more? Let's do that. Is it to hyperfixate on whatever it is in your business? Like, I'm super hyperfixated on something in my business right now, and I'm like, my dishes are not done. My floor hasn't been vacuumed in like 3 days, and I have been doing this. Oh, I could cry, but it's so exciting because when this is done, oh my God, it's going to save people's lives. It's going to help people. But I had to step out of the duck and step into the swan. I was so hyper fixated and so raised by my environment that it has been the biggest challenge to shift out of many of the environmental experiences and the patterns that I put myself in. And still, I find pieces of myself still holding on to those old aspects of myself. It takes time to learn these things, but we can. And we do it by repetition. And I have 3 super awesome tools that are going to help you step out of being a duck and step into being a swan. It's super exciting. The first one is The wild thinker. So tool number 1 is the wild thinker. Giving ourselves permission to think wildly. To be the wild self. Like we're breaking out of the box. We're breaking out of our society's patterns. We're breaking out of our family patterns, which was for me one of the hardest ones. Because as children and adults, we're seeking parents' approval. It's natural. It's very natural. And then we're seeking our teacher's approval, or our boss's approval, or our partnership's approval. Then we're seeking God's approval. Let's give ourselves that approval. And let's give ourselves permission to think outside the box. What are we here to create? Get wild with it. Write down 3 things that you really want to do in this world. Really want to see changed. Really want to bring forward. Write down 3 things. Wild. Off the top of your head. Do not limit yourself by the thinking. Allow yourself to just free write it. And sit and ponder on that for a while. I don't even care if it's learning how to paint Barbies in a different way. Whatever it is. It's beautiful. Because something in that is tying to something for freedom. Anyway, that's too deep. And then number 2 is the rewilding, which is my absolute favorite. Because anytime I give myself permission to be wild, it gives me so much fucking excitement. It frees this part of me where I've been itching to just be free, to do whatever I've wanted, to run in the flowers or whatever, make tinctures like I'm a weirdo. I'm a super hippie soul. But what is your rewilding? What would you do? And then dream weaving with them wild thinking things that you just wrote down. Now, what is this going to do for us? These two secrets alone are going to give us permission to think outside the box. How long did it take him to make the light bulb? It came up with an idea. It came with an idea. And everybody thought it was wild. He probably thought it was wild, but he gave that idea some matter, some energy, some time, and it came through him. Energetic response, channeling all these beautiful ideas. So what is that wild thing? I don't care what it is. Write it down. And then how can you weave that? Because when you give yourself permission to write these things down and you give yourself permission to think freely, you're taking past back those pieces that you carved off as a child to fit into society's box. You're taking back those pieces that you carved off to get your parents' approval. Right? It all ties back to the inner child. As much as nobody wants to admit it, it does, because we are imprinted by our society. We are imprinted by our environment. We were ducks. So when we do these top 2 swan secrets, it gives us permission to take a little bit of that back. To take back the imagination. To take back the wild thinking. To take back whatever it is. When we do that, it gives us permission to open our mind to connect to what we truly freaking want or what we're truly here for. It's super beautiful. And then number 3, how fast did I go? Oh, 23 minutes. That's pretty good. I try and spread these out a little bit, but I get so freaking excited. I just spit it all out. Number 3 for the Swan Secrets is the rule breakers. My absolute favorite, because I've been a rule breaker my whole life for lifetimes. In fact, I was burnt at the stake for it many times. But what does this mean to be the rule breaker? When you write down those 3 things that you would love to do, the wild thinker, when you would do the dream weaving, how could you make that possible? Whatever. The third one is the rule breaker. And we're going to write down those rules that we've been told our whole lives that we can't do that. Write down all the reasons why we can't. A little backwards, but it's helpful. Now, what is that going to do for us? When we write down all the reasons that we can't, we get to see where our limits are. Where we've put those limits on us. Where we put those limitations on us. This is going to help us connect to the attunement of our environment. Why we are raised like ducks. It helps us see those spaces of limitations within us. This is going to help us understand what we're carving off when we're taking off those words, those hurtful things, those spaces where we tried to fit into somebody else's box and patterns. Yes, Queen. And then number 4, I was like, I had a number 4. This was a super special one. When I lost it. Did I lose it? It's in my brain somewhere. The rewilding, the rule breaker. I'm like, I always share what I would do, right? What I would do. When it gets to the rule breaker part, I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to share any deeper. When we get to connect to those things, we get to connect to how our environment created us. Remember when I was talking about the elephant being tied to the post? When it was a baby elephant, it couldn't get off the post. So when it came a 2-ton elephant, it still thought it was stuck on the post. That's the product of our environment, of the environment that we're raised in. So when we go through these 3 swan secrets that I shared with you, and at the last one where we get to see those places where we're limiting ourselves, we get to see how we've become a product of our environment. This is going to help us see the mirrors and the connections that we've made in this life and how we can shift them. Now I got too deep, but I always get into it deep. I was like, if anybody wants to work with me to have help, support, walking you through all of the systems that I use, all the tools that I use, mindsets, belief systems, inner child healing, like quantum healing, feel free to join me in my workshop. I have a workshop coming up, and I also have coursework coming up, and I have some beautiful memberships that are available. Reach out. Consults is free. Chatting with me is free. Let's just talk. Let's chat it out. Let's see where you are, where you at, and what you want help with. When you work with me, we get to do these things in a couple months rather than years and years and years. I've put lifetimes of my growth and experiences and my mastery into all of the work that I share with you. So it helps you do it in months rather than years. You know, when I was growing up, I was always like, I was the weirdo with the ADHD, the dyslexia, who didn't like loud spaces or loud rooms, right? I was picked on all the time. I was a product of my environment. Like, I'm not even going to go into the inner child bullshit that I've had to go through. But I'm like, where was I going with that? Oh, I knew that I had all these differences for a reason and a purpose. I used to pray even as a kid. I know I'm a weirdo, but I always have been, to understand why I am so different. Why am I so different, Great Spirit? Why do I think so differently? Why do my B's and D's get mixed up? And I'm not even kidding. Sometimes I still read them backwards. Don't even care. It took me a long time to uncover all of that programming, all of those duck versus swan paradigms, to finally figure out why I'm so different. Because we're here to be free thinkers. We're here to change the world. I'm here to show people that it doesn't matter how backwards you think, you are a superpower. And other spiritual things and quantum awesome beautiful tricks that come with ADHD and dyslexia and whatever. Now, those we shared in my program. I'm not going to get into that because it's really, really deep. But we have these things for a reason. We came here different for a reason. We broke the mold for a reason. We are here to love differently. We are here to create new systems. We're here to bring new paradigms. We're here to make a fucking light bulb for a dark world. And I'm here to help you if you so choose. It's absolutely beautiful. We are the antidote to the darkness in this world. I love the light bulb to the darkness. That's very beautiful, Spirit. Thank you. We're here to change systems that are broken. To bring love to people that need it. To bring acceptance, understanding, non-judgment. To show people that different is okay. Weird is okay. Magic is okay. Being magical is okay. Blooming like the beautiful flower is totally okay. It's beautiful. It brings me to that Psalms in the Bible. When the flower knows when to bloom. It doesn't wonder what color it should be. It doesn't wonder what texture it should be. It doesn't wonder how many leaves it should be. It just blooms. But in this world, there's so much darkness, we're like suffocating all the blooms. We're here to bring more light, to bloom bigger. Super beautiful. Do you think a flower knows how beautiful it is? It just is. So how can we look in the mirror and see how fucking beautiful we are? Permission. Rewilding. I like that. Rewilding. Giving ourselves permission to become the swan, not the duck. Anyway, beautiful souls, this was super fun, super passionate, super excited about it. It was beautiful to share this amazing stuff with you. I love it. If anybody's interested in working with me, feel free to reach out. I have some tarot readings available. We are coming up on a lunar eclipse. It is big, big, big energy. Feel free to reach out if you're feeling stuck, stagnant, trapped, lost, whatever it is. Feel free to reach out. If you feel like you've been in a perpetual cycle, which a lot of us have, feel free to reach out because we are on the verge of breaking those cycles and it is super, super, super sexy. But it is so frustrating when we go backwards. So I totally understand where you're at. Feel free to reach out. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I want to look like Calangela. I'm like, Calangela is coming through. All right, beautiful souls. We'll talk to you soon. Mwah! See you next week. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. Get wild. Be wild.